Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. We're finally on our next project. We were just patiently waiting for the client to finish framing up this dock. And now that it's framed up, we've got our decking down here. So don't forget to click that subscribe button and hit that bell icon to be notified when we're putting out new content. All right, so basically what we have here is TimberTech AZEK in the dark hickory color. And it's over a 20-foot wide dock. So what we're doing is we're gonna lay a field color of dark hickory, and then we're gonna trim it in a triple border and do some unique staggered ends, herringbone type ends on the corners, and then we'll have a split seam in the middle of every 23 or 24 feet in between, right in the middle. So I've kind of already predetermined where those are gonna be. I came up here last week and kind of instructed the client on a couple things that I wanted him to get done. He did a really good job framing this deck. So now we are ready to get the decking installed. So that's what we're doing right now. And for this particular install, because it's a dock, we're not using clips because of the abuse that a dock takes over a standard deck. It's constantly having waves and water and motion and things beating up on it. So we're face screwing it with stainless steel Cortex screws, and then we are gonna cap those or cork those with the Fascia Master Cortex system. It's framed every 12 inches on center, and we're doubling up every board on every joist so that it has a really solid point of attachment. So that's what we're doing right now. We have our spacers out and we're starting to cinch boards and starting to install decking. Alright, so right now we're probably 6-8 feet into installing this deck. And what we're doing is, now that we have a straight line, the guys are chalking lines so we can keep our screw lines straight. Even though they're being Cortex, we still like to try and have straight, accurate lines for our screws as well. That way we can make sure we're trying to hit the center of that joist every time with every screw. And once that's done, we'll face screw. We clamp 4 boards down at a time. We screw those off, and then we do the next 4. And then once that's done, then we'll plug everything up, Cortex it, and then we'll start working on our borders. So we still got a ways to go, but we're making progress, and that's how we do. Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today we're buttoning up our current dock project. We just have a few more boards to install. We're gonna add some fascia and then some bumpers. So stay tuned for that. All right, so right now we're unloading this, but we gotta move our trailer out of the way because we have to make some room to put the materials. We don't wanna take it all the way down to the bottom, down by the lake, and then haul it back up. So we're gonna cut it up top and then bring it down as we need to. So that's what's up on the agenda. All right, so we pretty much have the deck laid, the field's done, it's Cortexed. We have our surface borders in, except I have 3 more of these strips to put in. So that's what I'm getting ready to do right now, is put those in. Once those are done, then we can start wrapping this deck, and then we'll be done. Oh, we have some bumpers. Bumpers, cleats, and a ladder to put in as well. So that's gonna take us a minute, but we should be able to get this thing wrapped pretty quickly. And then it's on to the next task. I'm fitting this piece, right? And even though I took the time to square these boards and cut them with a track saw, and be as accurate as I possibly humanly could. I'm human, right? So I'm not perfect. So even though this seam fits perfect and it looks pretty good, when I add all my gaps, I look good on this side, but because I'm running two separate sets of decking, they're off a little tiny bit. So I could do a couple things. I could take my belt sander. You can see over here, if you come over here, Cal, you can probably see it better. Oop, see, I just moved the board. But if I flush this end out, I'm a little long over here. So what I do, I'm gonna cut this on my chop saw. So I marked the top of my rasp, where I rasped the board. I marked the top of it with a pencil, but I'm also put a small little X on the corner of that board. That way when I'm up at the chop saw, I go, oh, which end was I gonna cut? Which side was I gonna cut? I always know, because I always have that little X. And that marks the spot, baby. So now I've cut that end like I was talking about earlier. And it still looks square, but it's gonna smooth out this way so that when I run my fascia along here, the board is nice and flat. So you'll see that in a minute. Cuts in this stuff too. I see now upon further inspection. All right, so what we have here is a waterproof deck that has a vinyl membrane on it. And I'm just mopping down some wet areas, and I'm noticing there's quite a few compromised spots on this deck that already are cut through the vinyl. So what we're gonna be doing, we're gonna be laying AZEK with the Dextra Dry Spline, just like on a job we did a while back. And we're gonna create a whole new waterproof top. But after further inspection, this surface would have had to have received some maintenance this year just to keep a couple areas from leaking. It may be leaking already. There's a spot over here that I was just mopping and I noticed. Can you zoom in on that? That's pretty bad. And then there's just a couple cuts here and there in the surface. It's a sunny day today, so it's gonna be raining tomorrow and Friday. So we're going to lay down some ice and water guard right over the top of this before we install our deck boards. And so there's a little bit of prep that has to be done. So we're gonna start working on taking the railing down right now up to a certain point at least, so that we can get at least half of this laid down with some ice and water guard, so it has a chance to stick in this nice warm weather, and or warmer weather. And the next couple of days is gonna be raining pretty bad. So just something we're gonna do right now to kind of prep. I still have to finish the trim set on the dock and that kind of thing, but it's to keep some of the other guys busy while I'm doing that. Somebody will help me and somebody else will be working on this rail. So that's what we're doing for now. Alright, so we're ready to install our fascia, but before we do, whenever I put fascia, and whenever I'm screwing a deck board to the side of a deck, I always put G-tape down to protect this piece, because this one will rot first. Of all the boards, anything horizontal where moisture will get trapped between will rot out this board, even though it's pressure treated. So we're going to put a piece of 2-inch and a piece of 9-inch up here to completely cover this 2x10 so that doesn't happen. So we got to do that really quick before we start wrapping the deck. It's almost like there's something. Oh, my clip's on it still.
Yeah. Clip's not magnetic?
Well, it's magnetic, but it's too much of a magnetic. Here, let me see that. Let's see if I can snag it. bumper so boats, when your buddy's all drunk and comes up here on his boat and he smashes into your dock, it doesn't destroy the beautiful fascia we just installed. Did you get one? Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today we're installing some TimberTech AZEK decking on top of an existing waterproof deck. So it's kind of an interesting way to improve the look, and we'll explain to you how we're doing that. All right, so what you see here is, okay, let's start over here. If you turn around, you can see the existing waterproof deck. What it looks like, it's like a vinyl type of product. It's 4 feet wide and there's a seam every 4 feet in it, and the clients weren't really happy with the way it looked, and it also had some compromised areas in it, so it was starting to fail. So instead of ripping the whole deck down, there's an existing roof structure on it. The frame's in good shape because it's dry, because it's been waterproof. What we did is we installed Grace Ice and Water Guard right over the top of the vinyl. And then what we're doing is we're face screwing TimberTech AZEK with the Fascia Master Pro Cortex system, and we're using the Dextra-Dry waterproof spline in between the groove deck boards to keep it waterproof, because we're compromising the substructure of the plywood with every screw. But that's what the Grace is for as well. It helps keep the screws from leaking underneath the Dextra if it ever leaks. Okay, so it's kind of like insurance. It's not really doing anything at all unless there's a leak. So if one of the screws tries to leak, or if the Dextra-Dry happens to get moist in a spot, this ice and water shield, the water would have to get below the deck boards, below the Dextra-Dry, below the ice and water shield, below the already existing vinyl membrane to compromise this deck. So I'm very confident that it's going to be okay. So we've installed probably, I don't know, 12 to 14 feet of decking, and that's all we're going to do today, is just keep continuing to run decking from this way. Obviously some of our deck has not been, we don't have the Vicor down yet, or the ice and water guard down yet, so we're going to get that done. We're hoping, fingers crossed, that it doesn't rain, because this stuff sticks pretty good. If do you see that dust? That was cool. If it rains too much, it'll keep it from adhering. So hopefully we can get that laid down. But what we're trying to do is actually get to this first post, or close to it, before we start to run the ice and water guard, because we have some furniture and planters and a barbecue up here. We got to kind of move things around to get everything installed. So we're just going to continue moving these boards this way, and then once we get to a stopping point, then we got to install the rest of the Grace. Now it's going to be raining really good next week, so we do want to get this ice and water guard down today, but we're doing pretty good on progress. We've been at it a couple hours, but we're just moving along, so follow along and see how we do. To do is, because we don't have anywhere to put a clamp or a board bender on like we did on our last Dextra-Dry deck, we are screwing a cleat down right down to the deck, and then we're using our clamps as spreaders to create the compression that we need so that we can put in our screws. So that's how we're able to get a nice tight seal on the Dextra-Dry. So another important step when you're installing Dextra-Dry is we pre-install all of our spline in the side of the boards, but you got to caulk the first 2 to 3 inches of each side of the spline before you install it. So what we do is we just pull away the spline, run a bead of caulk on the top and the bottom, and smush that in. So you can kind of see right here where the caulk is squeezing out. We don't worry about cleaning that until tomorrow or the next day so that it has time to cure. And then we go ahead and put a bead on the top, and then we roll the board up and we put a bead right here. Whoops. And it seems like a lot, but this helps keep the capillary action of the water from trying to enter the inside of the dextrodry and create any potential leaks that might happen from capillary action. So it's an important step that you shouldn't neglect. When running your decks perpendicular to the house, you also want to put a fat bead of caulk up against the house to let the board, like we put a bead like this and then we butt the board into it so it seats in there real nice and helps keep water from penetrating inside of that. Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today we are installing some more TimberTech AZEK decking. We have about 1/3 of the deck laid, maybe a little bit more than that, but now we have some obstructions in the way, so we're gonna have to figure those out. All right, so basically what we're doing, to recap, is we are installing TimberTech AZEK over the top of a waterproof deck that has dextrodry waterproof spline in between the grooves. So we're face screwing all the boards, and then we're cortexing the top of the deck boards so that it's a hidden fastener top that the deck can't leak. Once we have it fully installed, there won't be any leaks because of the dextrodry, and we're running the boards perpendicular to the house because the deck already has drainage and the water will just run right off the deck. So basically what we've done is we've installed Grace ice and water guard over the top, and if this is a high temperature water guard, so it's going to last a long time. It helps with extreme heat. If there's any heat buildup between the layers, it's not going to have any issues. And we've covered every square inch of this upper deck with that. And the reason I do that is so that every screw that goes through that penetrates into the plywood will seal itself in case there's a leak. In case there's a leak through the decking or through the dextrodry, there's ice and water guard below that, so the water's still going to travel this way because it's going to take the path of least resistance and still exit off the deck. The ice and water guard will have its own dumping area where it goes right into a gutter. So that's the plan. Right now I'm just taping up around this pole, so it's kind of an interesting thing. These posts were round and the client had somebody come in and put square product around everything to give it a different look, a more modern look, and we had to cut away some of that so that I could waterproof up the side of these posts. So what I'm doing right now is I'm covering the bottom section, and then I'm going to roll some up the side of the post and we'll go from there. All right, there you go. I should probably cut a scrap. We're 4.5 hours in on our current day, and we have 5 deck boards laid so far. Well, it's like that because for one, it's Monday, and 2, we had to open up this post because we knew that there was a round column below it, and then we had to notch around this post, which was a challenge, but also we had to add the dextrodry in to the spline, which adds a whole nother dimension of difficulty to installing these 5 deck boards. So now that that's done, we should be able to figure out what our angle is against the house and start running subsequent boards now. We should be able to catch a break until we get to the next post, which is right over there. Thank goodness there's only 2 of these that we're dealing with. But some days are like that. You know, we got 20 feet ran the other day, and we'll probably get 10 feet ran today because it's all about cutting around these posts that were a pleasant surprise. So just remember, you can't always calculate how far you think you're going to get in a day because you have these things that slow you down. But if we don't do this right, if we don't get these splines in right, if we don't do everything just right, it's going to leak. And guess what? I don't want any leaks. So we got to do our due diligence.
DM me. So this one, dude?
Okay, so it looks like we got to change our angle
Yeah.
quite a bit. Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today it's a beautiful sunny day in the Pacific Northwest. We're working up in a place called Lake Taps, and we're just getting to the final stages of our decking install. It's been a unique install. We went right over the top of a waterproof deck with AZEK decking, and it was a plywood deck with vinyl. Client didn't like it. We went ahead and we're putting in brand new coastline groove decking with the dextrodry waterproof spline in it, and we came into an issue. So this deck was existing, and it's 64 feet wide, and we're running our deck boards perpendicular to the house because this deck has drainage like this, right? So we're putting our decking going this way, and then we're putting our rubber grommet, our dextrodry spline, in between those boards, and we're adding compression, and everything's great. We've been laying this deck for what, 4 days now? Everything was great yesterday, and we get around, there's a center part of the house that jets out. So we were doing pretty good. Everything was tight, our compression's good, our lines were good. We're using a Stabilo level to check the straightness of our deck boards. But then we got to the far side of the deck, and we had to run our decking parallel with the frame of the deck over there. 50 feet that way, okay? So we committed to a line 50 feet away from where we are right now. Well, because of the compression variances, the fact that that end of the deck wasn't square, and I probably should have picked up on that, but there's not a whole lot I could do unless I wanted to modify the waterproofing underlayment underneath this, and I really didn't want to do that. So I committed to a straight line on the far side of the deck. We've run 50 feet worth of deck boards and different compressions in and out and that kind of thing, trying to keep the stuff straight. We have run out of square. Quite a bit, actually. One thing I didn't realize, when you're running 50 feet of dextrodry, you can do that. That can happen. You can actually run the boards out of square. You can make it a little tight on one side. If you do that too many times, you can actually start taking the board and racking it this way. Problem 2, this side of the deck is not square to that side of the deck. I didn't build this deck originally. These are just things I'm finding out now. I took a 60-foot or 100-foot tape, measured out 64 feet. The edges are about a ½ inch off, and unfortunately they're going the wrong way in our benefit. So what we're doing to rectify this is we're using double clamps on the first 2 or 3 places where we're putting our screws to give it as much compression as we possibly can on the dextrodry, and then the rest of the board we are doing a standard compression. We still have to make the boards tight so that the water can't get through the spline, but we're also trying to keep the boards as straight as possible while we're racking it. So in 10 boards, which is about a little over 5 feet, we've been able to make up 1 inch of squareness, which is quite a bit. We're still about 1.5 inches out, but we have enough boards left that we, as long as we pay attention and take our time and slow down and just make it happen, we are going to be able to get this thing back into square. I wouldn't call it a mistake. It's something that we caught in the right amount of time. If we would have ran all the boards all the way out, I would have had a big problem to deal with that I'm not sure how I could have fixed, because we were doing a fascia mount with our rail system, which means I can't adjust the framing too much. The deck's already waterproofed, it's already framed, it's already done. We're just going to add some cosmetic fascia, but if I don't have the right allowances on the outside of the deck, my fascia mount's not going to work either, and then the rail's going to look all goofy. So it's up to me to make sure that these deck boards fall back into play. We're within 1.5 inches now, and I'm feeling much more confident than I did last night when we left the job site, or this morning when I first got here. Knowing that we've made up 1 inch and 5 feet means I can make up another up to 2 more inches, and I think I need about 1.5 inches. So we're gonna keep doing what we're doing right now. We're gonna keep laying these boards, and then Austin's gonna come in and start plugging, and we'll just see kind of where we end up today. So that's kind of the story. That's what I got for you this morning, man. So follow along and see how we do. Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today we are just rolling on with our current deck project. We have a slight issue that we're working on. So we basically put decking over the top of an existing deck. And after we cut the line of the decking, we realized there was a major dip in the deck, and we don't like the way it looks. So we're going to separate this post wrap and try to elevate the post in the middle of this beam right here, because we feel like it's dipped quite a bit, and we have a temporary jack on it, and it is higher than it was, so we know we're going in the right direction. So right now we're going to try to pull this face piece off right here and see if we can get some shims underneath this post to keep this thing from dropping, and try to keep that line a little bit straighter. So we're working on that, and we also have some trim work to do, and we're pulling down some gutters, and we're doing all kinds of stuff today. So stay tuned and see how we do.
Just adding some G tape to the side of our ledgers here, or rim joists, because with our decks are dry, we might as well make this waterproof, and when we put our fascia on, the fascia could trap water if this wasn't G-tape. So by G-taping it, any water that does spill over this and behind the fascia will be, the wood will be protected. So always a good thing. I mean, you know, new piece.
Alright, so what I'm doing right now is I'm ripping down some parts for our deck dry system. We're getting ready to mount some fascia to the outside of the deck, and we got to add a 1/4 inch spacer every 12 inches, and so that when we put our fascia, we just can't put our fascia right to the ends of the deck boards because the water needs a place to drain. So what we're doing is we're putting up a piece of fascia, but we got to add some 1/4 inch gaps so the water has a place to go off the deck and drop into a gutter. We just took the old gutter down, and we're gonna have to have a new gutter installed because it's not gonna work out. But it's gonna be much better looking for our fascia boards, so I'm kind of happy we took it down. The guys are G-taping that up right now, and then we'll get these parts on. And then I'm gonna try to get back up onto the house and get the trim done against the house. So today's all about trim and finish. Probably gonna button that up Monday, and then we'll start working on some of the other items on this project that the clients want us to do. Alright, so got our downstairs tasks finished up, and now I'm trying to finish up some trim on the house, and it's been a little tricky, so I'm just trying to figure out some angles. I got this angle finder, which is kind of cool. It's called an angle fix, and we're going to actually do a separate video on it, but what it does is you kind of push it together to get the angle, and then it gives you your miter right here. So it doesn't tell you in a digital, it just, you line up your saw blade to that, and off you go. So now I know what my miter needs to be. I can get my next piece of trim measured and cut. How many plans checkers does it take to approve a Pierce County building permit? I don't know either, because I still don't have one for this lower deck. Hey guys, drdecks here. We're on our current deck build, and we're just finishing up on some lower section of the deck stuff. So I'm gonna go over that with you real quick. If you like what you see today, don't forget to click that subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be notified when we're putting out new content. All right, so we built this, we did a layover on this dock for the client. The dock was already framed. We came in, installed new decking, and then they said, hey, we wanna do a little bench down there so we have a place to hang out, and we thought this was kind of the perfect spot for the bench. So we built that yesterday and got it installed this morning after the client verified they wanted to have a little bit of room behind it for access, and they might put a light pole in the corner for some lighting at night. So we just finished that up, and basically what this bench is it's built out of TimberTech AZEK. There's coastline. So all this deck, the dock is built out of dark hickory, but the bench top is coastline, and then the wrap is done in the dark hickory as well. And the reason we did that is just because the upper deck, which we'll talk about in a minute, is also coastline, and then it has a dark hickory fascia detail. We used Regal Ideas aluminum rail posts for this, and then we used their covers, their base plate covers, to cover everything up. We just finished caulking those on, so they're good to go. That should last a long time, and it's very sturdy, and there's no wood that's going to rot on the post to dock contact or anything like that. So I'm really happy about that. And then on the upper deck, we finished all of our fascia detail. We're waiting on railing. It's going to be a couple weeks on that, so we'll have to come back to install the railing. It's cable rail, but we got the fascia boards done, and because it was a Dexter Dry deck, it was kind of a unique detail that we did, where we had a piece of 7 1/4 multi-width that went on the bottom first, and then we had to fur out with some spacers to catch the top piece. So it's a 7 1/4 inch multi-width on the bottom, solid board, then a 5 1/2 inch piece on top that covers, and that's what it looks like when it's done. All right, so basically what we have here is an old landing and stairs that the client had inside their garage, and while we're here, they asked us if we would rebuild the landing and put some new stairs in to kind of match what they have. And after taking this off the wall, I really can't blame them, because all it is a plywood box with some plywood stringers. And the only reason it was still standing is because they had attached it with so many nails to the wall. We're gonna get cracking on that and rebuild the landing, get the stairs redone, and then probably gonna box frame the stairs, and then we'll go from there. What, is this the level? Nope, I went 1 1/8 inches, because that's usually what I do on a deck. We could put it at 1 inch exactly, but it might be tough to stuff it in there. Yeah. This way we got a little bit of play, and I don't think it's gonna impede the look too much. So right now I am laying out we're box framing some stairs, and I'm doing the layout for our stairs. This is not a big staircase, it's very small, it's only 3 feet wide. We only need 4 jacks or stringers per stair. So what I'm doing is I'm doing all the layouts, so once the guys get the parts ripped, they can assemble each individual step together, and then we're gonna box frame them so they stack on top of one another. It's a really super stable way to build a staircase. And on lower and often high traffic areas, I do this versus cutting out stair stringers out of 2x12. So that's what we're doing right now, kind of getting this thing laid out, and then we'll go from there. Hey guys, Dr. Dex here. Today, I gotta tell you, not every job is huge. Not every deck we build is massive. Sometimes we build some small stuff too. Yeah, so this is a massive 6 foot by 8 foot landing, porch, stoop, dust catcher, leaf catcher. But it was important to the clients. It was interesting how this deck was laid out. All right, so what this was a little landing, and it was about 2 inches down. So it was kind of like a toe catcher. We don't understand why the elevation was the way it was, but okay, so the clients wanted to take it out because basically they just put decorations in here for different seasons and things like that. It used to be a atrium where there was a skylight up in here. And when they re-roofed the house, the skylight was very expensive, so they opted not to put in the skylight and just roof over it and TNG it, and now it's just this space. There used to be different vegetation and stuff in here, but now it's more of a decoration space, like decorating your front porch and that kind of thing. So they wanted the deck inside here to match the outside deck in the back. So that's what we're doing right now is we have pulled the old deck, we've reframed it, and now we're going to install new TimberTech AZEK decking with the Fascia Master Cortex hidden plugging system. If you watch our videos, you guys know what that is, but you'll also be seeing it on camera today. So basically what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to figure out spacing for these deck boards so that I don't have to rip a small piece into this run, that we can do everything the proper width. So I think I'm about there with that. So I'm just waiting for the client for approval, and then we'll get going. I'm gonna go over, well, I'm gonna go over a bit. Cutting a little long because I know it's not going to fit quite the way I want it to without an extra cut. Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today we're installing some cable rail on a current deck project we're on. Okay, so basically what we've done is, this is a unique install. It's called a fascia mount. So we had to install all the fascia brackets yesterday and kind of get them level and semi close to being in the right place. And today, oh, and then we actually installed the post yesterday as well. So we have the fascia brackets on the deck, the posts are installed, and the client wants kind of a matching top cap look. And this deck was existing. We actually laid new decking down, but it kind of has a couple of rolls in it. So we lasered the tops of our posts so that everything's nice and level, and then we made an adjustment for every single post, has an adjustment on it for the height. So every post is a different length, except for the sides, which are very similar in length. So right now we're installing a metal cap that we're gonna screw a PVC deck board to match the dark trim color. And then we have another cap that snaps in on top of that and kind of gives it some rigidity. So we'll be able to have 10 fasteners hidden fastened to the top cap everywhere in between each rail section. So that's what we're doing now, is we're kind of laying the framework for the rail. Once we get the top caps done, then we can start stringing up the cable. We might start doing that once our third man gets here. Might have him start stringing cable, pre-drilling some holes, whatever, and we'll start kind of getting this thing to the next level. So once we have our top caps on, it's just running the cable, tightening that up, and then we're done.
Okay, so this is our, I guess you could call it a U-channel. And then on top of this U-channel, we're putting a top cap piece of AZEK on here. So before we do that, I'm coming through and going about a ½ inch away from each post and drilling holes. And then right down the center of each post, drilling a couple holes. And then I'm going in between the center and the first holes and drilling some holes there. And then what those holes are going to do is we're using about 1.5 inch pan head screw, and then we're going to screw down from below. So that way, when we put our top cap here, it'll be a truly seamless board, and you won't see any screw holes at all. And that'll keep it locked in place with our cable rail system as well. So yeah, just a little bit of prep work before we lay our top cap on.
All right, so I'm cutting in the top caps for our cable rail. Because of the way the metal top cap goes over the top of the posts, the ends are kind of unsightly. So to trick those out, we're gonna do some folded corners. So the top cap's gonna fold over the top of the rail, and I heat bent and glued these together, and it's all gonna be hidden fastened, so it's kind of a cool effect. On this one I have to do a double. So I've got one side made, and the other side I have cut already. And now I'm gonna heat this up and glue it together. What I did is I cut a V-notch, but I left a little bit of the material uncut, so that once I heat this up, I can glue it and fold it over. It'll give it a nice look when it comes over the top cap, and then it covers up that unsightly end. So here we go. Just gotta let our heat gun warm up a little bit. And you'll notice, as this gets warmer, it'll start to kind of get weak on its own accord. I won't have to do a whole lot to it to make it drop. I like to heat the bottom a little bit first. And this takes a couple minutes. And that's kind of what you want. You want to get it fairly pliable so that you have a couple of seconds to apply your glue and your activator. I'm using 2P10 glue and activator. I don't know if you can catch it on camera, but you can kind of see where it's... I'm going to heat the backside some more. You can kind of see it just want to fall away. So that's pretty good. That's ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply 2P10 glue to one side of this. A little bit of 2P10 activator to the other side. I'll fold that baby up, and in 10 seconds, you've got a solid miter. And then I'll go through and I'll take a knife and I'll go in here and I'll trim this glue out so that it sits nice and flush on top of the post and we don't have any problems with the install. So you can see a little bit of sheen from the activator, so it's better to use less than more, and I got a little aggressive with the activator. My son gave me a tip of doing a little bit lighter coating of the activator and then applying the glue.
That might be too much.
Well, I have a heavy hand. What can I say? "10 seconds. Done."
I'm glad I was wrong.
Yeah, that was the least amount of blowout I had all day. The rest of them foamed up like... You know those rice things that you have at the Chinese restaurant, and they throw it in hot oil and they expand up like this? Like those noodles or whatever? Man, I haven't had those in about 1.5 years. Send noodles. We're installing the AZEK top caps on top of the cable rail system, and we're doing everything from a hidden fastener point of view. So we have pre-drilled, if we come down here, we pre-drilled all of our holes through the top cap, or the bottom part of the top cap, the metal part, and then we space this accordingly and clamp it, and then we put a 3/4 inch screw through the bottom in every location. So every 5-foot section, though these are about 4 foot, what do we got in between here? 4'4", 4'5". There's 10 screws. And then once those are all screwed together, then there's a little beauty cap that goes up underneath here. And that's what Naz is doing right now, is he's installing all those snap caps, I call them, but they're beauty caps. So it hides all of our screws, and it gives it a little bit more rigidity. So by the time we get this piece on, and then we put the snap cap on, this becomes pretty stable. I wouldn't sit up here or walk on it, or if you're a gymnast, I wouldn't do any stunts on it, but you can lean on it. Put your drink on it. Right, man. 10 to go. Hey guys, Dr. Dex here. Today we are doing this. Basically, we are finished up with this project. We're still waiting for a building permit for our back deck. The most amazing deck we'll build this year is being held up. 7 months so far in permitting. So, if you like what you see today, please click that subscribe button and hit that bell icon to be notified when we're putting out new content, which is 3 days a week right now. So, all right, basically what we had done, we had built this little landing. You guys probably caught the episode of that. Now we are installing the cable rail. We had to install these fascia mount brackets first, and everything we did on this little garage landing, we mimicked from the back deck. So we have our fascia mount brackets installed, and then we installed our posts, and now we're installing the metal top cap, and then what I'm doing right now is I'm getting ready to install the finish cap that goes on top of that. And that's a piece of 5/4 by 3.5 or 1 by 3.5 AZEK dark hickory. The whole deck's dark hickory, skirting, everything trim. So we're doing that as well to match. And then once that's done, I can tension the cable. So I'll show you guys how I do it since we're here today, and that's gonna be probably a major portion of the video. It'll be interesting for you guys to see how this particular cable rail system is installed. So basically we have our post set, everything's level. This is a system by a company called American Structures here in Auburn, Washington. And this is called a Series 400. What it is, it comes with everything for your cable rail, and then there's a top piece that goes over the top of your post, and then you drill through that, and then you go from underneath, and you install the top caps that way, and then, so it's all hidden fastened. And then once that's done, there's a little snap cap that goes underneath here that hides all that stuff, and then we can get to the cable. So that's what we're getting to right now. We're gonna get that done, and then you'll see the rest come about. Short one part, one of the. All right, so we have the top cap finished. Now it's time to lace the cable and get it pre-tensioned. Then we can tension the cable, and then we can cut it to length, finish it off. So the next step on how to install cable, on this particular brand, there's a swaged end, and it has a threaded end on it. And what happens is, when this goes through the post, you turn 3 full threads, and then you stop. So basically, you pull this through, and I usually put a little mark around the outside edge of the cable so I know, or the fitting, so I know how much to turn it. And then I try to go 3 full turns. But before I do that, before I forget, there's 2 other things I gotta do. I like to use this Loctite anti-seize. It works really good on stainless steel parts, because if you get any galling on your stainless steel parts, they lock up, and it's almost like they weld themselves together, and it's virtually impossible to take that apart. So I put a little bit of anti-seize on the threads of my parts, so I just make sure that they don't gall up. And then one other thing that we have to do is we have to add these little washers to the ends. This helps the threading process when we're tensioning the cable. This helps keep things moving good so it doesn't dig into the aluminum too much when we're spinning these on. So, okay, so now that I have my anti-seize on and my little washer on the end, I can start to thread this on. And I have my pencil lead, so there's 1, there's 2, and there's 3 full turns. So then I can erase that if I want, or I'll do it later. And then I can put this back through. Okay, so that run is ready to go. We'll show the other side in a minute. So what I'm gonna do right now is the same exact thing 10 more times. All right, so we're just gonna keep going. It's not gonna hurt to have a little anti-seize. And I've learned these techniques because through different companies I've purchased different rail systems through. So some of this is included in this package and some of it was not. But it's all good. Okay, so again, usually what I do is I go through and I just put a pencil mark on each end before I get too crazy. The pencil line really helps me identify that I got those 3 full turns. And then another thing is you got to make sure you're fitting, when you start to tension, make sure your cable fittings are completely seated against the post. Because see how they can pull back? So that's why I like to kind of push the cable through and make sure we've got a decent amount of tension on here. So these are flush. Because when I tension the cable, all these threads are going to go inside. You will not see these threaded ends. All right, so we have all of our cables threaded on this end. Now we need to go to the other side of where the cable ends, and I'll show you how we're going to finish threading that side. The only one we can't do is number 6 because we don't have the fitting for it. So Nas is on his way to get that, and then we'll be able to finish up when he gets back. All right, so we're on the other side of the cable system, and we have another fitting. This is a pull-through fitting, and there's a spring tensioner on the inside of each one of these. So when you thread these on, these fittings, you kind of spin them clockwise to get them to go through. The cable pulls through this way, but you cannot pull it off. You have to use a special little tool. If you need to get these off, you have to use a special little tool that goes onto the cable, and then you release the spring, and then you can move the cable on and off. If you make a mistake, if you forget to put in this little washer, or if you accidentally thread it in the wrong hole, which I've done before. So once you get it threaded on the cable, then you want to go ahead and get it going through the post. Okay? And then you pull pretty tight on it. And you can, as you can see, when I pulled on that, it pulled the fitting away from the post. On stairs are a little bit tricky because you're going at an angle. You're starting from a straight and then you're going into an angle, so they can be a little trickier. So sometimes it's kind of nice to have this little spring tool in case you got to reset the cable. Okay, so on stairs, there's where the fitting's supposed to be. I'm just trying to get it snug. There we go. So you always want to make sure that your fittings are flush or wherever you need them to be on your rail so that when you go to tension them up, you don't end up with a part that's buried inside the post instead of flush with it like this. So before I tension anything, I'm going to go back and double check both sides and make sure that everything's seated properly before I start tensioning. All right, now that the cable is pre-tensioned, but it's still not taut enough, obviously this will get loose and stretch out. We don't even have our threads in yet. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take my duckbill vice grips, I'm gonna clamp it right on the cable. There we go. And then I'm gonna go ahead and use a socket. I have a socket with the right size bit on it to fit inside the fitting right here. I'm going to start tensioning, and you'll notice these threads will disappear inside the post. You're hearing some rattling as well. That rattle is actually some stiffeners inside the post, and that noise will go away as well. Okay, so that just told me that it's getting pretty tight. That sounds pretty good. So sometimes I do it to sound, sometimes I do it to tension, but I want to make sure that a child cannot get through here and here without a whole lot of effort. The top one's tight. Now I'm going to go do the very bottom one. Okay. I need to give it a little bit more tension because I want to make sure I bury the threads in the post. I don't like seeing those from the side. There we go. Sometimes the duckbills are hard to release, so I just use my socket to kind of help me out because it can hurt your fingers a little bit if you're... That's really tight. As we tighten up these other cables, the top and the bottom are going to loosen up a little bit because you're pulling everything together and you're putting tension on the post, and even though there's stiffeners inside the post, it's still going to want to take it in a little bit. So that's probably a little too much tension, but it will loosen up as I start to tighten these. You can definitely see a difference and feel a difference in the cable as you tighten it. Now, there's a lot of companies that have special devices that help you with the tension of your cable. For this particular install, I don't have any of those with me, so I'm just kind of going by feel and by a little bit by sound, but mostly by feel to make sure that we have enough tension on the cable so it's not too loose and that it's not going to come loose in the future. All right, so that's a wrap on this little landing. Basically what it is, it's TimberTech AZEK, dark hickory, and that's your landing and your stairs, fully trimmed and skirted in all 1x6 and Cortex with AZEK Cortex color matching plugs. The rail system was done by American Structures and Design. We installed it. This is a stainless steel, it's an aluminum and stainless steel cable rail system with a Series 400 top so that we could also install a really nice AZEK top cap on top to match the deck. I think it's a really classy look. I love the way this looks. Cables are nice and tight. Railing wasn't actually necessary on this little landing because it was under 30 inches tall, but the client just wanted everything to match. So we did what they asked us to do, and I think it's a nice result in the end. So they have a full 3 feet of access with the fascia mount. We just went ahead and matched that to what we have on the back deck. And then we did some really nice heavy trim on the bottom just to kind of give it a nice look. So that's what this little landing's all about. Let's go take a look at the dock. All right, so we're standing down on the dock now, and the dock was already pre-framed. The client had framed the dock, but he wanted us to come in and lay the top surface of it. So we chose AZEK dark hickory for the color, and the dock was 23 feet wide, so I was coming up with some ideas on how we could do a pattern or make it look right. So what we did, we made a triple border around the entire surface of the dock, and then we put some seams in it to split the lengths so that, and that's something traditionally that I do on a lot of my jobs, is I like to have intentional breaks. I don't like to run random patterns too much where you're trying to butt joint 2 boards over an 1.5 inch joist, or even a double. I don't do that a whole lot. So we were able to add some framing to what he had done and reposition some things. And I thought this thing turned out really nice. We also added a little 6-foot corner bench in the back, and we decided to make the bench seat out of coastline, and then we wrapped that in dark hickory as well to kind of give the bench and some cohesion with the upper deck because it's all coastline as well. So it kind of ties some of the colors into the different areas on the property. We also Cortex this deck as well. It's all stainless steel screws that are face screwed to the framing, and then a lot of Cortex plugging goes on. On a dock, my favorite way to fasten a deck board is by using a Cortex screw, stainless steel, face screwing, because you get so much more action. A standard deck won't see the kind of action that a dock will. So I don't use clips on docks. I don't believe in them. I think things are going to move and water's going to be splashing and boats are going to be bumping into it and that kind of thing. So we always like to face screw Cortex. Every joist is doubled screwed, and there will not be any issues with this dock for many, many years. We also added some cleats, some rubber bumpers to the outside of the dock for protection from boats and jet skis, and we added their ladder back in place. So this was a really fun part of the project to do. And let's go take a look at that upper deck. All right, and finally, our upper deck. This deck was already a waterproof deck to start with. It was already pre-framed, already had some plywood and some type of an elastomeric or vinyl coating on it. And so what we did is we took TimberTech AZEK grooved coastline boards, and we used a Dexter Dry waterproof gutter spline in between those boards, and we figured out a way to compress the boards, so we reinstalled decking right over the top of the existing structure. The challenge with that is that this deck is 60 feet wide, and it's a little bit like this, and each end was not square to one another. So by the time we got to the far end, we really had to try and make an effort to keep the deck board square to the house. It was a challenge, but we got through it. From there, we were able to use a set of trim. We took a piece of multi-width AZEK dark hickory and installed that on the bottom. Since the decking had to overhang the existing waterproof deck, we had to create some spacers for a 5.5-inch piece of AZEK decking that went on the top. If you'll notice, there's also a 1/4-inch gap, so water can drain off the deck and drip down below. And so it's a good way for the water to exit off the deck. From there, we had to make some special fascia mount shims to push out the railing system so it can make it past our existing drainage that we had on this deck. It was also a challenge, but we figured it out. And then we were able to mount the fascia mount brackets through our shims into the existing frame of the deck, which made it real sturdy. We actually used Fascia Master ledger locks to install the rail system to the end of the deck. And then we were able to mimic the same idea like you saw on the other little deck, where it's stainless steel cable, black aluminum posts with a Series 400 top, and then we put our own AZEK top cap on top of that. Really clean. It was also a challenge to keep this 60-foot line nice and straight. Again, because we were working with a pre-existing deck, so there was some issues with things going like this. So we had to re-shim everything. We shimmed them out once to get them level, and then we had to re-shim them out of level to make them look straight. So I hope you guys enjoyed this build. We really enjoyed showing it to you. Don't forget to click that subscribe button, and please hit the bell icon to be notified when we're putting out new content. Leave your comments below, and don't forget to like our videos. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.